thinking about the time needed, okay, for the presentation. So I think it's best that each group need to submit a recorded video, okay, meaning that you record your presentation using whatever software that you want to use, either PowerPoint or any other online presentation technique, okay, that you find interesting and easy to use to present I mean, to present your project, okay, from the introduction, from chapter 1 until chapter 5. Okay, so I will put up also the instruction for that, how many minutes, okay, each of the recorded presentation should have, maybe around 10 to 15 minutes maximum, okay, by presenting in from your chapter 1, the main components of your chapter 1, focusing on the problem statement, research question, objective, and then highlighting what are the main theory, okay, in chapter number 2, and also the main past studies, okay, that you are referring to, okay, in chapter 2, and then highlighting what are the methods, techniques that you use in chapter 3, and then focusing on the main findings of your project, okay, and then you wrap up the presentation with the conclusion in chapter number 5. Okay, so basically it's the presentation for the whole project lah. Okay, so since the video submission, since the presentation will be done by video submission, so meaning that we can have afford, okay, to have our lecture to finish by, you know, by around week 12 or 13 maximum, meaning that I can have the final week of the semester, okay, to review your video presentation, okay, and maybe we have our 1 or 2 more final lectures on Q&A session, okay, meaning on my part, okay, I want to ask some questions regarding the video presentation, okay, that you submit earlier. So meaning that the video must be submitted okay, before the end of week 13 lah. Okay, so that the final week of lecture we can have our so the lectures during the final week of the semester will be focusing on the Q&A, okay, on my part, okay, and okay, and each group need to answer lah all the relevant questions. Okay, so again, that instruction I will upload in your OL, okay, when the time comes, but that is the plan lah, meaning that the presentation will not be done live in Webex, okay, but it's based on recorded video presentation. Okay, so okay, so that is the main news for today lah, okay, on the structure, okay, of your project, okay, and just to remind, the presentation is only for the group project, okay, for individual project, okay, there is no video submission is needed lah, because what is needed is just your the written part, chapter 1, 2, and 3, okay, from your project. Okay, so today the plan for our lecture this week, I mean for today, again, to continue on discussing on the use of SPSS. Okay, and if you look in your WhatsApp, okay, I send you two files or 3 files. Okay, this is basically 2 files. One is basically a data from SPSS, okay, and also the questions, the construct of questions from that particular project lah. So this is from your senior lah, your seniors project on, but this is in Malay lah. Okay, but the focus is not on the apa tu material, but I just want to show you what you need to do or what you need to have, okay, in your chapter 4, okay, in the analysis. Okay, so of course you can refer to many examples online, okay, from past thesis, past journals, okay, how especially on thesis lah, because journals usually you cannot find the the layout based on chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tu, that one is mainly on thesis. Okay, journal you don't have the layout based on chapters. Okay, because article in journal is very short. Okay, 10 pages, 15 pages long. Okay, but when you refer to article from journals, okay, I mean from thesis, then you should be able to okay. So all the articles that you can get from the Google Drive, okay, especially topics which are using primary data, okay, from questionnaire, okay, such as this one, for example, okay. So you can see how many of the thesis, how the layout for chapter 3, okay, which we discussed already a few weeks ago, okay, what is expected for you to have in the discussion in your chapter number 3, okay. So that will be the main components lah. Okay, for example, here in this particular chapter, thesis number 57, okay, factors affecting career choice. Okay, so this is so what we discussed is what is your population frame. So we already went through this part. Okay, and then how are you going to collect what is the sample size, okay, based on the population. Okay, and then you refer to the Krejci and Morgan table, what should be the minimum sample size based on the population of interest. Okay, if your sample is based on SAFB students, okay, so from that few thousand SAFB student, what would be the minimum sample size that you need to collect, okay, in order to conduct your study, okay, and also you need to know what is the breakdown of the programs within SAFB so that you can have samples that come from each of the program lah, based on the proportion, okay, proportion or percentage of student from each of the programs. So it applies to all lah. If you are using COB, then maybe you want to focus on the college, the schools under COB. If you are doing some based on negeri or states, then maybe you want to break down based on the districts, okay, and whatnot lah. Okay, so those are the highlight, okay, of chapter number 3. Okay, so I'm not going to discuss again what is needed, okay, for you to write. Okay, so you can refer to many examples. Okay, so I think one of the main thing which is missing is pilot study. Okay, pilot study means in actual study you need to conduct pilot study. Pilot study is before you do the main data collection. Is very common among researchers to do a pilot study. Okay, pilot study is basically you send out your questionnaire to a small group of respondents just to see whether your questionnaire can be easily understood and the construct of your questions is good enough, okay, is sufficient for you to answer your objectives, and also whether you get consistent answers, okay, from the respondent. Okay, because that's why I keep on reminding you all, okay, from the very beginning of the semester, do not create your own questions, because questions from questionnaire you cannot simply construct based on your own. I mean, you can add few questions here and there, but those questions that you add must be consistent with the economic, with the theory, with the in line with the past studies, what other people have done. So that's why in chapter number 2, when you write your literature review, okay, you refer to many studies, okay, what these studies has done, what is the conclusion, okay, and you will also find that, okay, when most of the time, okay, whenever a study rely on questionnaire, the construct of the item in a questionnaire, okay, must be based on past studies, meaning that the questions that you want to ask, okay, is most of the question must be consistent with what other people have done in the past, meaning that if you are doing a topic, for example, on cost of living, okay, the impact of increase in the cost of living on the well-being, okay, on the kebajikan, on the well-being of the people. So whatever questions that is related on the cost of living must be based on what other people have asked previously. So you cannot simply ask questions that people have not asked before. Okay, of course you can ask maybe new questions that is related to COVID-19 period. Okay, because if the study was done 3 or 4 years ago, so of course at that time there is still no COVID-19 virus lah. Okay, so maybe you can add few questions here and there to reflect the current scenario. But those new questions also must be consistent with within the scope of the theory, within the scope of the empirical studies from previous journals, previous theses. Okay, so not simply you create your own questions, and language-wise is also very important. Okay, meaning that the questions that you put in the questionnaire must be easily understood, whether in English or in Bahasa Malaysia or in any language lah. So mostly it depends on your target respondent. If your respondent mainly consists of people who speak Malay, for example, then you need to have the question in Malay lah. Okay, but if your target respondents can understand both English or Malay, then you need to have dual language lah. But when it comes to writing, even though your respondent are answering them in Malay, but for the sake of publication, submission purpose, for example, if you are submitting your project or your work to a journal, international journal, then the question need to be written in English so that the is publishable lah, meaning that the articles that you find online, even though the study, the original question was done in Malay, but for you to submit into a journal, so the authors, the lecturers who conduct the study must convert the questions into English, and those questions must be in terms of the language, the grammar and everything must be correct lah. You cannot simply write whatever you think is correct lah. So you need to send for proofreader, proofread your English and all those technical things lah. Okay, so that's why it's very important, which I remind you all earlier, which many of you did not follow lah, unfortunately. Okay, write or do a topic that where you can get enough samples of previous questions, okay, on the similar topic. Okay, not simply mix and match. You find some question on this different topic and then you combine here and there, and then it becomes very inconsistent, again, not in line with what other people have done in the past and whatnot. Okay, so so whatever comments that I give, okay, I've given before. So improve your questionnaire. Okay, so try to follow as close as possible to what other people have done in the past on a similar topic of yours, especially if your samples are focusing on students. So you need to find questionnaire samples that are focusing on students, okay, as their respondent. Okay, because different respondent may require different structure of questions. If your respondent are students, but you are asking about cost of increase in term, about employment, then it's not consistent lah, because employment are for those who are already finished study, okay, already in the job market. But then if you ask question about employment, but your respondent are among students, so it's not correct lah, the questions, because your target respondent does not match the characteristics of your questionnaire. Okay, and so these are the common mistakes that many of the groups did lah, okay, in the preparation of your questionnaire. So you need to, and then if your questions come from studies not in Malaysia, for example, the studies were done in the US, in the UK, in the Europe, for example. So you need to see whether those questions is it relevant in the context of Malaysia. Okay, because you cannot simply copy and paste those questions and simply apply them in Malaysia. So you need to think, you need to find examples that are closely related to the case of Malaysia lah. Okay, so that's why it's the best thing is, of course, to find study that were done on Malaysian population. Okay, done in Malaysia using Malaysian samples. Okay, especially if you're focusing on students as your respondent. So find articles, theses that are focusing on students as the respondent, so that it's easier for you to have the right questions to ask. Okay, and because whatever questions that you put in your questionnaire, that will contribute significantly, okay, in the overall quality, okay, and of course lah, marks for your project, okay. So even though you run the you key in your data into SPSS, but your questions are incorrect or invalid. So whatever results that you put in your chapter number 4, it will become meaningless lah, okay, because the questions that you create earlier does not actually fulfill or so does not actually answer the research question. And also how does those questions actually you can compare your questions with the questions from past studies. So where do you get the questions from? Okay, whether your questions are based on Mr. X, Mr. Y article, okay, Mr. Z thesis. So these are the things that you need to mention in chapter number 3. For example, if you see from this particular um, thesis, for example, okay. So the student mentioned what are the questions from this particular section lah. So I think this is mainly on the Likert scale questions, and you can see here, for example, career choice. Okay, so these are based on this study, blah 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 lah. Okay, so you see that these questions are not simply made up. Okay, but these questions are based on studies from these people lah. Brown, Dean, Han, Murtaza, and whatnot. Okay, and the same goes with the rest of the components. So these questions derive from this particular theory and this particular study. Okay, and family influence, for example, these questions are derived from. So if you go back to these original papers, original articles cited in this section, so you should be able to find similar questions. Okay, meaning that the question is not simply you all create on your own lah. Okay, so you discuss among yourself and see what questions that you want to ask. It doesn't work that way. Okay, academic article, academic research is different from newspaper article. Okay, newspaper or blog or Facebook research. Okay, Facebook you can just simply ask opinion. Okay, what do you think? Okay, you can ask any question without needing to actually refer to theory. Okay, but academic research, okay, as what you are doing right now, you are bounded by the theory of that particular subject and what people have done. Okay, meaning that empirical reviews. So that's why in chapter number 2, you need to try to understand as much as what you are actually referring to. Okay, not simply copy and paste and then you put in chapter number 2. So the purpose of chapter number 2 in the real academic world is whatever paper that you refer in chapter number 2 is supposed to be applied, okay, or used in the construct of your questionnaire, okay, and also whatever that you want to analyze in chapter number 4. So those are the main functions of all the articles that you read in chapter number 2, not simply for the sake of we need chapter 2, then you put any articles. Okay, it doesn't work that way lah. So chapter number 2 is supposed to guide you what questions that you need to ask. Okay, how do you construct your questions? What should be the sentence that you need to put in the questionnaire? So these questions are mainly based on previous studies. Okay, and of course, as I mentioned many times, you can add few questions here and there. You can add new questions where it's appropriate. Okay, but it must be within the scope or within the context of the theory, within the same scope of past studies. Meaning you cannot simply ask question that is very different, okay, from what people have done. And okay, and then people will start to ask you what is the relevance of this question. Okay, and at the end of the day, whatever that you ask, okay, must be reflected in what you plan to actually investigate in your chapter number 1, in your research questions, and also in your research objectives. Okay, and whatever that you plan to answer later on, okay, in chapter number 4, how does your analysis actually relate to the economic theory, to the theory in as what you put in chapter number 2? Okay, whether your findings is it in line with the theory, and whether your findings is it the same or is it consistent with the findings from previous studies as what you put in chapter number 2 also. Okay, if you find that For example, family influence is a very significant factor from past studies. So past studies show that family influence is very important in influencing the decision on what job, what career for a person to actually have. So your own findings, your own analysis in your own study must be compared with the findings from previous studies as well. Okay, so meaning that your whatever conclusion that you want to come out, okay, in chapter number 5, or whatever findings that you want to write in chapter number 4, you must always go back to chapter number 2, meaning that whether your findings, the results that you get, is it similar to studies that you mentioned in chapter number 2, or is it different? If it is different, why? If it is the same, you need to provide some justifications. Okay, so this is what I want to actually highlight in chapter number 4 later lah, maybe next week or the week after that. Okay, how do you actually approach chapter number 4, which is the main part in, I mean, not the main part lah, I mean, is among the 5 chapters, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, apart from your problem statement in chapter number 1, which is a very important section in your thesis, okay, and also your research question, the second most important will be the analysis in chapter number 4, because what you plan in chapter number 1, we need to see how you answer those objectives in chapter number 4. Okay, what are the hypotheses that you want to test in order to answer your research questions in chapter number 1. So those are, you need to put together all the findings in chapter number 4. So whether you have answered your objective or not, that one we can see in chapter number 4. So if your chapter number 4 is weak, okay, and then the whole project becomes weak lah. I mean, meaning that the significance of your findings become weak, okay, lemah lah, okay, and it at the end of the day, it will affect your marks lah, okay, because chapter 4 contribute the most marks in your project. So that's why I'm really concerned about the construct of your questionnaire. If your questionnaire is very bad, okay, is not according to the previous study, you simply construct questions on your own, the layout of your questionnaire is confusing, okay, the language that you use is confusing, okay, not correct and everything. So at the end of the day, what information that you collect will also become less relevant lah, because the data that you collect, okay, it is not the right or not the best data that you can have. Of course, in your own project, okay, you are not going to ask the actual respondent lah, okay, but that is not the focus. The focus is, if you were to do an actual research based on the questionnaire that you create, okay, so that's why it's very important in the real world scenario for researchers to do pilot study, okay, as what I showed just now lah, from this particular thesis here, okay, is to conduct a pilot study, because pilot study is needed for you to test whether your questionnaire, is it reliable or not. For example, in this particular study, you can see that the student distribute to 60 students, okay, 60 students for the pilot study purpose, okay, but from these 60 students, 59 questions were revised, meaning that those pilot study help the student actually to modify and revise up to 59 questions based on the inconsistencies. So this is what I was mentioning just now. Okay, the pilot study will help you to determine what questions that you need to modify, whether the language need to be improved, okay, or certain item need to be updated, okay, or certain items need to be dropped, deleted from your question because it is confusing, it is not answering your research questions properly, and other things lah. Okay, so but of course, since you are not doing a pilot study in your project, okay, so you need to have your questionnaires as good as possible lah. Okay, of course, I don't expect your question to be at par with PhD or master's level, But so that's why I keep on mentioning, refer to past studies, refer to past thesis where you can get sample questionnaires related to your topic. Okay, especially it matches the scope of your study. If you are focusing on students as your respondent, then your question should be similar. I mean, the construct of your question should be applicable. Okay, dia kena bersamaan lah. Okay, must match the target respondent. Okay, as such, this is number 57 here lah, because the target respondent are among students. Okay, so you can see some of the so these questions are targeted for students. So you can see how the construct. So you can, I mean, if you are doing a topic like this, factors affecting career choice, then you can directly apply or use these questions because the target respondents are also among students, even though the students live in Indonesia, for example. But overall, it shouldn't be much different than UUM students. Okay, so you can get the questions from this particular section here lah, okay, in section number 3 here. Okay, even though it's not given directly in the thesis, but you can get the idea what the questions are in the questionnaire from chapter number 3 just now. Okay, when the student actually mention, okay, what are the items for each of the components. Okay, for personal interest, these are the questions. So basically, these are the Likert skill questions that you will have lah, okay, that the student use. The only thing missing is the scale 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that you normally have in a Likert skill question. But you can see these are the questions being applied, okay, apart from the demographic question, which is not present here lah. But you can always know what are the demographic questions when you go to chapter number 4. So you can see how the student actually what are the questions being asked. For example, the gender, the age, year of study, the CGPA, which I mentioned that many of you did not ask in your questionnaires. Okay, so because you are focusing on students, so you need to have some indicators to measure the student performance. Okay, because student with high pointer, for example, may have a different outcome, okay, or career choice than student with lower pointer. Okay, for example. So GPA, so you can see these are the questions from demographic or from section A. Okay, and then you carry on with the Likert scale component lah. So there are 5 components under the Likert scale, and the student. So you don't. I mean, I did not teach you on this Crombar Alpha. Basically, this is based on the reliability test from the pilot testing. Okay, but never mind. Okay. But in your semester 7, okay, when you do your own your actual thesis project, so this reliability test, this Crombar Alpha table that you see here, okay, is required lah as part of your thesis. Okay, when you do your kertas ilmiah or thesis project in your semester 7. Okay, but for this particular project this semester, okay, I don't require this lah. Okay. So this is what I want to recap lah. So what we did. So I already shown you in our previous lectures, okay, on the SPSS, okay. And since and when I was thinking about all the issues that you have in your questionnaires, and many of you are still unsure how you want to actually approach the chapter number 4. Okay, for example, in your analysis in chapter number 4. How do you actually plan to answer your research questions using SPSS? So what do you need to have? Okay, so so let me go back to this particular file here. So if you have your, so you should be able to open the same file. Okay, so you can have a quick look on the questions. Okay, the construct of these questions in this SPSS. Okay, so the student have this. Okay, but of course in Malay lah. Okay, so you need to okay, for those who cannot understand Malay language like Sihun, okay, so you need to ask your group members lah to translate this for you. Okay, but basically you can actually follow question 1 until question number 33. Okay, based on this questions here lah. Okay, in this particular project. Okay, so Question 1 is about the age, 2 about the gender, 3 about the race, okay, 4 about your marital status, 4 about your, and then the rest lah. So you can see the sequence in the questionnaire here, okay, from the questionnaire and how it matches the items in the SPSS file, okay, until the end of the questionnaire lah. So basically what I want to focus is on the Likert scale, okay, because I think many of you, okay, I think all of the groups, okay, will be relying on the Likert scale questions to answer your research questions, okay, and that's where the analysis using what apply what you have learned in your statistics paper, okay, especially on the ANOVA or the t-test, okay, that you learn before, okay, when you want to compare between two populations or you want to compare between 3 or more populations when you use ANOVA. So I already shown you in our previous lectures, okay. So basically the purpose of this project is also to see how you can apply the knowledge that you learn in your basic statistics, okay, when it comes to the analysis of your project, okay. So you with the help of SPSS lah. Okay, of course you can analyze this using Excel, but it's much easier and more systematic, okay, for you to actually apply this or answer these questions in your questionnaire, okay, using SPSS. Okay, any question so far? Which I don't expect to get any question lah, as usual. Ada soalan? Standard lah, no question. Korang saja yang reply, Nur Hazwan ni. Where are the rest of you? Sleeping ke apa? Okay, so okay, so mana ni? Okay. So apa tu? So you all can open the file kan, tak ada masalah kan? Okay, so the two file, one is the thesis. I mean I just want to focus on the apa tu? On the Likert scale question lah. Okay. So sekejap. Okay. So the Likert scale question are divided into section B, section C, and also section D. So B, C, and D are the Likert scale questions. So you can see here B1 to B5, C1 to C6, and finally D1 to D8. So maybe you have 3 sections in your questionnaire based on Likert scale. Okay, B1 to B5 and the rest. Okay, and the previous questions are basically the demographic or the background questions lah. Question about age, gender, CGPA. Okay, where you get your finance from. For example, if you're focusing on the students, okay, as your respondent, so you want to know where the student get their allowance from, whether from PTPTN, from parents, from scholarship and whatnot lah. Okay, beside the background of the study. Okay, but of course for this particular project, the student did not use the respondent are not among student but among the support staff of UUM, the UPSB staff. So you don't see you don't see information on CGPA lah, okay, because these are the respondent are among the workers, okay, in UUM. So that's why you have information about income, okay, what is the net income, okay, because the respondent are among the employees of UUM, okay. So some of the questions may not be relevant to you, okay, but the goal for today's lecture, okay, we have around 30 minutes or so, okay. So I just want to show you what you can do to actually answer your research questions. Okay, before I forget, okay, in your thesis, okay, even though okay, let's say you have 3 research questions that you have presented before in your chapter number 1. Okay, so let me go back to your so these are your your draft for chapter 1. Okay, so for example group 1, okay, so these are your proposed research question, okay, in your, for example, to determine the relationship between peer pressure and career choice, lagi tadi. Okay, for group number 2, of course lah, group number 2, I think you are changing your topic once again. Okay, so but just for an example lah, okay, even though you will change your topic whatever, okay, but I think what I want to show you is most of the groups you construct your research questions, okay, in a similar format lah or similar manner. Okay, for example, for group number 3, okay, so you have, for example, which I want you to change lah. So this is not the way to write research questions. Okay, for group 4 pun, I think you are changing this one. So you're not going to do topic on this homestay kan. Okay, so let me go back to this. Kejap. What I want to share actually is okay. 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 Okay, so this basically is the thesis project, okay, of your senior, I think 2 years ago, okay, 2019, 2019, 2020 lah, okay. Almost 2 years ago lah. Okay, so basically the study was, I mean, the focus of the thesis is to look at the impact of COVID-19 lockdown, okay, during the lockdown period, okay, on the income of small-scale traders. Okay, small-scale traders means those pasar malam or night market traders, hawkers, okay, those who open stores, okay, gerai-gerai along the roadside, okay. So that is the focus of my students lah when they did the thesis project, okay, for in semester 7, 3 semesters ago or 4 semesters ago. Okay, so basically how you should design or redo lah your chapter 1, okay, in your research question, so that whatever analysis that you want to do in your chapter number 4 tu will be similar lah or consistent for all groups, okay, because I do not want, okay, some group to have different style of analysis and then you don't know how actually you want to approach your SPSS. Okay, so this is one project, okay, another similar project with the same scope, but this is in Malay lah, okay. Okay, but if you look at both of the thesis, more or less the same lah in terms of the research question. Okay, so I want you guys to do the similar style lah when you want to construct your research questions, okay, in your chapter 1, and also because whatever that you plan to ask, whatever that you ask in your research question, that will help you how to analyze your data using SPSS. Okay, because if you ask a question which you cannot actually answer using SPSS, or it is very difficult actually to answer using SPSS, then how are you going to answer your research question? Okay, so to make things simple, okay, for all groups, okay, I want to see the research question number 1, okay, to focus on the demography, meaning that you should have something like this lah. Okay, what are the uh, okay, because this is what you see here, income patterns, meaning the characteristics of the traders lah, meaning if you're focusing on employees, then it should be something on this lah. But if your respondent are, let's say, among students, okay, so what are the characteristics okay of for example SAB students, okay, or what are the demographic lah, not characteristic, demo demo sekejap. Okay, what are the demographics ada demo okay, what are the demographic characteristics of ni lah of, so this can be anything lah, SAB ke of your SAX students lah. Okay, if you're focusing, let's say, on people in Jitera, for example, then it should be something like that lah. So basically, research question number 1 is just a simple analysis of your data using pie chart ke, histogram ke. So basically, it's just getting to know what are the backgrounds or what are the characteristics of your respondents. So if you look at this particular project here, okay, when the student actually answer the research question number 1, okay, so research question number 1 is basically here, you can see that, okay, using simple pie chart, histogram, okay, so these are actually to answer the research questions, research question number 1, okay, because research question number 1 is supposed to you want to learn more about the characteristics of the respondent. Okay, so this is what you all need to have lah in your research question number 1. Ini, okay. What are the demographic characteristics of your okay, SAB or COB or whatever lah, okay, whatever your respondents will be lah, okay. So if not student, then for example the employees of UUM, for example, okay, or the low income groups or the B40 residents in Kedah, for example. So so this last part depends on who are your target respondent lah. Okay, so that will be the your research question number 1. Okay, so for research question number 2, meaning that it should be similar across all groups, even though your topic is different. But research question number 2 will focus 2 and 3 lah. Okay, will focus mainly on your Likert skill components. Okay, so for example, okay, mana dia? Wait. Okay, let me check whether that you can write that way or not. Uh, no, is there? Hmm, yeah. So, wait, is there any? Wait, let me check Google Scholar first. Hmm, wait. Okay, so I think we can do this way. Okay, so if you look at thesis number 57 just now, okay, the thesis is focusing on factors affecting career choice. Okay, so the first apa tu the first objective that I want all groups to have is basically just focusing on the demographic characteristics of your respondents. Okay, so that will be the simple research question number one. Okay, meaning that we are in order to answer research question number one, is just you are going to use the simple ni lah, bar graph, histogram, pie chart, whatever lah. Okay, just to explore the characteristics of your respondent. Okay, but for research question number two, okay, since I want every group to utilize the hypothesis testing, okay, whether comparing two population, okay, using the independent t-test, or you want to compare three or more populations using ANOVA. So I think for research question number two, you should apply the t-test. Okay, for research question number two, number three, you should apply the ANOVA testing. Okay, so for research question number two, okay, for independent comparing two population. So if you look at this particular project here, thesis number 57, okay, does self-efficacy, does family influence the career choice? Okay, So how do we actually going to modify this? Okay, because all of your, all groups should have respondent that belong to male or female, meaning that you will have respondent that will come from male or female respondents. So basically, I want the second, if possible, okay, try to analyze or have a research question. Does Okay, because I'm just trying to follow the same style of constructing the research question. So that's why it's important for you to refer to past studies. Okay, because I myself are not actually into research using primary data. Okay, my research is basically mostly using secondary data, using regression and whatnot lah. That is what I'm more into. Okay, in my own research. Okay, but for the sake of teaching. Okay, so that's why I need to refer also to ada ni lah for from past study, so that okay, whatever language or sentence structure that you want to have in your research question must be based on previous study, so that you don't create research question which are confusing and incorrect lah. Okay, in term of the language style. Okay, so we start with the word does lah. Okay, so here does personal income influence career choice. Okay, so what I want each group to have, okay, if try to if possible lah, as does gender gender differences, okay, affect apa tu affect. So let's say, so this one is about career choice. Okay, gender differences. Yes, okay, wait, just okay, wait, no. How to make it simple but yet easy for all groups to follow here, because uh, mana self efficacy influence. Okay, so what we do is, okay, okay, so okay. Ni. Okay, so what I have here, so basically I want to test if okay, if gender differences affect the career choice of SAB students. So basically, so under career choice, okay, so you have, for example, in this particular thesis, okay, you have different factors, okay, under the Likert scale, okay, ada faktor here lah, as what you see here, apa, the self-efficacy, one factor, and then family influence as one factor, personal interest, another factor, economic consideration, another factor. Okay, so there are, I think, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, four factors lah. 4 factors that will affect the career choice of student. So basically, when I write like this, okay, does gender differences affect the career choice? So basically, we want to see for all the 4 factors. Okay, there are 4 factors just now. Okay, self-efficacy, family, and whatnot, family influence. So there are 4 factors that will influence the career choice. But we want to see if all these 4 factors, is there any differences when it comes to gender? Meaning, is there ada tak perbezaan? If you want to analyze according to gender, meaning, is there any difference when if you are a female student or if you are a male student? Okay, when it comes to these 4 factors, is there any differences in terms of if being a female student or being a male student? Okay, from the perspective of these 4 factors. So this is what the research question number 2 is about lah. So if you want to answer research question number 2, you need to analyze for all the 4 factors at once. Meaning you need to have 4 analysis lah. So 1 analysis for each of the factor. So let's say if your study is about is about intention to purchase halal food. Okay, so what are the topics about intention to purchase, intention to whatever lah, okay, factors that affect the decision for you to buy halal foods. Let's say there are 3 main factors. There are 3 factors that will affect your decision to purchase halal foods. So you can divide those 3 factors analysis based on gender. So this is what I mean here lah. So this career choice, so this particular topic is about career choice. So there are 4 factors that can affect career choice according to this thesis lah. Okay, self-efficacy, family influence, personal interest, and economic factor. So these 4 factors are supposed to influence career choice. But my goal, okay, because I want to apply the analysis of t-test, independent t-test, as what you learned in your basic statistics before. So I want to see if I want to analyze from these 4 factors, is there any difference when it comes to genders? When it comes to gender, okay, whether you are being male or female, does being male or female will affect the outcome of your career choice based on these 4 factors lah. Okay, so the Likert scale marks that you obtain, okay, from the questionnaires, okay, that you collect, okay, when the respondent provide the answers for your questionnaire for all the 4 factors, okay, when it comes to career choice, you will get what is the mark lah, with the 5 strongly agree or whatever lah. So we want to analyze each of the factor, okay, in this example for career choice, there are 4 factors just now. So we want to see from that each of the 4 factor, okay, is there any difference when it comes to gender? Okay, why gender? Because there are only 2 factors. Gender only 2 lah, male or female. We don't consider transgender or LGBT or whatever lah. Okay, so when you construct your questionnaire, okay, in the section of gender, of course there are only two gender lah, male or female. Okay, so for the first objective, I just want you to analyze when it comes to gender, because we want to compare between 2 population. Okay, so this is where we want to apply our knowledge on this analysis of t-test. Okay, independent comparing between 2 population or 2 groups lah. Okay, so you learned this before, so now is the time to actually apply that knowledge when it comes to your own project. So we want to compare between 2 population or two groups lah, 2 groups of people, male versus female. So we want to analyze the factors affecting the topic of your study tu. So in this example, career choice. So let's say you are investigating on other issue lah. So whatever topic that you decide, okay. So you try to analyze them the factors, all the Likert scale questions. So let's say you have 3 Likert scale sections based on the factor, based on the factors. Okay, so you want to break the analysis into gender differences. So if you got 3 factors under your Likert scale, so you will have 3 different analyses. Okay, if you got 4 factors, as for example in this, if you are following this thesis on this career choice, so meaning you will have 4 factors, okay, that will influence the career choice, and that 4 factors you can break down the analysis according to gender differences. Okay, so this will be your research question number 2. Okay, so the third research question is, so basically this is using t-test. Okay, to be more specific, independent, independent t-test. Okay, so this is what research question number 2 is supposed to use, okay, in your analysis. Okay, for the third one, we want to apply ANOVA, ANOVA test. Okay, so ANOVA test is when you want to compare 3 or more population or 3 or more groups. Okay, male and female only 2 groups lah. So you cannot, it's not suitable for you to use ANOVA. So we apply the independent t-test. Okay, but what if you want to compare, you want to analyze, so basically 2 and 3 are the same, but now we want to analyze according to if you are comparing 3 or more groups or population. Okay, for example, okay, in this particular project here, this UPSB file here, okay, so of course in your respondent, one of the easiest one is to analyze according to race, for example, Malay, Chinese, Indian, Christian or whatnot lah. So because when it comes to race, at least you will have 3 or more race lah, Malay, Chinese, Indian and above. Okay, or if you're focusing on, let's say, SAFB students, okay, so of course you will have at least 4 different programs lah, economics, okay, finance, banking, agribusiness. So there are at least 4 groups that you can compare the analysis from. Okay, so I'm just focusing on if you're looking in terms of SAB student. If you're focusing on COB, so COB means that how many colleges or how many school under COB? I think there are 6, ada 6 school. Okay, 6 school under COB, SAFB, accounting, TISA, and then you have IBS and whatnot lah. So you have 6 groups or 6 different population that you can compare. Okay, so these are the things that you can do when it comes to ANOVA testing. Okay, meaning that we want to investigate the factors that affect career choice. Okay, when it comes to, so how do you do this? Okay, you cannot specify only gender difference. So what we need to do is, okay, we need to specify does so let's say we want to look at does the program backgrounds. Okay, so we just use the word programs lah. Does programs undergraduate program, okay, undergraduate programs or okay, affect inilah the career choice. CE of inilah SAB SEFB student. Okay, so meaning if you're focusing, let's say we want to analyze so what are the groupings that you can have? Okay, undergraduate programs, Okay, if you're focusing on COB, then maybe you can see that's apa tu apa nak kata apa? I mean, if you want to focus, if you want to analyze if there is any difference in terms of where the students come from lah, meaning if you come from SAB, if you come from TISA, if you come from IBS, okay, that's your course structure ke whatever lah, okay, maybe you need to figure out what is the best term to use, okay, affect the career choice, meaning if you belong to SAB versus if you belong to, let's say, IBS or TISA, for example, under COB schools, okay, that's okay. Belonging to different programs or different school will affect the career choice of the students, okay, of COB students if you're focusing on COB lah. Okay, so basically we want to use, because ANOVA testing requires you to compare 3 or more population. Okay, so if you want to analyze the career choice factors, okay, from the perspective of students that come from different backgrounds, okay, different schools, for example, that involve 3 or more different groupings, SAB, TISA, IBS, okay, business and whatever lah. So if you want to compare this kind of groupings, you want to analyze them. If your sample can be divided according to more than 3 groups, okay, for example, the economics, finance, banking, agribusiness. So you want to analyze based on these groupings of students. So as long as there are 3 or more groups, then you can apply ANOVA. Okay, but if you're only comparing 2 groups or 2 population, then you can only apply the independent t-test. Okay, so basically I want why I'm specifying this, because I want to see how you apply, okay, how you can apply this simple analysis in statistics when it comes to your research questions. Okay, so this is what I plan lah. So for you to do, okay, for this. So how you can do this in SPSS again lah. So today we don't have the time to show you, but I just want to get this part clear first, meaning because if you learn how to use ANOVA pun, or how to use SPSS, but you do not know how to actually reflect, or how you can actually modify your project, your research question to suit the ANOVA or the t-test analysis. Okay, because whatever that you analyze, it must you must compare again what you actually plan to, what is your research question. Okay, because what you ask in your research question will eventually determine what kind of analysis do you expect to use. Okay, what kind of hypothesis that you expect to have in your chapter number 4. Okay, because if you ask a question like this, then of course we are expecting something like a t-test punya analysis. Okay, but if you are focusing on groupings of more than 3 or more population, like you are comparing students from economy versus banking versus finance versus agribusiness, you want to look at these 4 group students, and these 4 group of students when it comes to career choice, then you must perform the analysis using ANOVA. So research questions will indicate what kind of analysis that you can have lah. For this particular thesis number 57, the student, I think, rely on one is also on ANOVA, but the student also rely on regression. Okay, you can see here because why the student rely on regression, because in this particular thesis, the student define there is dependent and also independent variables. By now you should know already, when it comes to regression, you should have dependent and also independent variable. So that's why in this chapter here, you can see that the student have dependent variable, which is the career choice factor. Okay, so it's the Y and the X lah. Okay, if you recall whatever that you when you learn basic econometrics, okay, you have Y as a function of X1, okay, X2 and X3 and whatnot lah. So when you run the regression, the ordinary least square, OLS, you must have dependent, which is your Y variable, and also your independent variable, which is your X1, X2, and X3. So this particular thesis rely on regression technique, okay, to answer the research objective. That's why the research question, as what you see here, okay, is based on how to answer this, okay, to examine does self-efficacy influence career choice. So basically, career choice is the dependent variable, self-efficacy is the independent variable. So the student want to see the regression result between the dependent and also the independent variable. Okay, so but in your project, okay, I don't expect the regression technique to be applied. Okay, so I don't expect you to have dependent and also independent variable. Okay, but what I expect for all groups to have is a set of some Likert scale questions lah, like 3 sections of Likert scale questions that you can analyze using ANOVA and also using independent t-test. So how are we going to approach that? Okay, so first you need to know what questions that how you should redesign your research question so that your research question should be able to, you can answer your research question using the t-test and also the ANOVA testing. So this is based on how many Likert scale sections that you have. Okay, following thesis number 57 just now, there are 4 factors, okay, that affect career choice. Okay, if you look at this particular project here from this student, okay, the student have identified 3 factors, B, C, and also D. Okay, whether salary, debt, and also increase in the prices will affect the cost of living. So there are 3 factors that the student has identified which influence the cost of living. So if I were to apply the student this particular project here, okay, so basically, does gender differences affect the cost of living of UPSB staff? Okay, because this is about the cost of living for the UPSB staff, the staff of UM lah. Okay, so does gender differences affect, for example, the cost of living, okay, among the UPSB staff? So the cost of living itu can be divided into 3 factors, as what the student mentioned here: the increase in price, okay, the hutang, debt, and also salary. So we can divide the analysis. So even though you have 1 question only here, but the analysis can be done in 3, you can have 3 different analysis. Okay, for the meaning that you need to do three t-tests because there are 3 factors, B, C, and D. Okay, but for ANOVA testing, okay, you need to have 3 ANOVA testing lah when it comes to this particular project because there are 3 factors, 3 Likert scale sections, B, C, and D. So in section research question number 2, even though you only have 1 question, but you need to have 3 t-tests, okay, which reflect the 3 factors. Okay, and for ANOVA, okay, if for this particular project again, there are 3 factors, B, C, and D. So you're going to have 3 ANOVA testing as well. So you have 3 t-tests and also 3 ANOVA testing. Okay, so I will show this in your next week lecture. Okay, how you can apply the t-test if you are comparing gender, for example, and how you can apply ANOVA testing if you are comparing in terms of undergraduate programs, students that belong to economic, finance, banking, and for example, based on, but since we are using this particular data here from the student, so maybe we're going to stick to the grouping of the student. So the grouping can be divided according to, let's say, education level, whether the student have whether primary school, secondary school, or higher, and whatnot lah, or maybe based on whether they are single, married, okay, or ni lah widow, okay, or maybe based on Malay, Chinese, Indian, and the rest lah, okay, because we can analyze. If you want to apply ANOVA, at least there must be 3 groupings, so we can analyze using this data, okay, if you want to use ANOVA, we can group we can use ANOVA when it comes to, for example, gender, race or status, whether you are married, single or widow, or based on academic level, because there are more than 3 groupings of academic, okay, SPM, degree and whatnot lah. Okay, so this will be, okay, hopefully I can show this by next week, and you can restructure your research question for your project, okay, and subsequently your questionnaire lah, okay, modified so that you have the Likert skill questions suitable to be applied lah under this t-test and also ANOVA testing. Okay, so it's 10 o'clock already, so I think that's it for today. Okay, so check your OL by tomorrow. Okay, I will give you some instructions on how you should resubmit your updated questionnaire. Okay, as I mentioned last Monday, I want to see where do you get the questions from. Okay, just put a screenshot, snapshot of the articles or journal or thesis. Okay, where the questions come from, because I want as much as possible, the question must be based on previous study, okay, not you create the questions on your own. Okay, and again, your questionnaire to submit according to the right format, meaning you should have the cover page, okay, and not in terms of Google form. Okay, submit according to Microsoft Word or PDF style lah, okay, not based on how you key in Google form. Okay, so thank you. Assalamualaikum.